I want to talk free speech, as we often do here on the platform, and a really interesting chain of events. You will remember the controversy over a freedom of speech event to be held at Victoria University, which was rescheduled and then stacked with people who were quite clearly against free speech. And I have been watching revelations from the Free Speech Union, who asked for, under the Official Information Act, I think, for the documents around what had gone on at Victoria University. And actually, it made for really disturbing reading. I want you to concentrate here because it's not a story that, like a ferry going aground or the exploitation of migrant workers, it doesn't necessarily jump up and hit you in the face, this story, but it is very important nonetheless. So we are joined now to delve into this by Jonathan Ayling, the boss, the big cheese at the Free Speech Union. Jonathan, thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
All right, I want to go back, and we covered this, we talked to you about it at the time. You, in very good faith, said you would take place in a panel discussion or an event at Victoria University about freedom of speech and academic freedom of speech. And there was some brouhaha about it. I think the student newspaper and various faculties didn't seem to like the fact that you were taking part in this. But the information that has come to light since paints a pretty disturbing picture, does it not, of what was really going on at the university?
Well, that's exactly right. And I think two things to keep in mind from the outset is exactly what you've already said, Sean. What the revelations show here is quite concerning for the way our tertiary education institutions feel like they can operate, or some of them at least. And the state of our universities and its respect for free speech really is problematic. The thing was, this came about because they said there was scheduling problems, and that it was just that they couldn't get the right personalities in the right place at the right time. And in reality, what we see here is, for both myself and Dr. Michael Johnson, a former associate dean at Victoria University and now at the New Zealand Initiative, there was quite a vitriolic backlash against the university from primarily within its own staff, but especially the School for Māori Studies. There's a lot to dig through, Sean. There was a 600-page OIA document almost, but it boils down to really, it seems the entire Māori Studies school said that they simply would not participate and rejected the idea.
And there was at some stage, Jonathan, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Vice-Chancellor of the university invited people to find dirt on you, did he not?
That probably came a bit later. At first, they felt like they couldn't go ahead because they couldn't find a Māori participant who would be opposing Michael and myself to sit alongside it. There are claims in the OIA that says no Māori will sit on this panel while Jonathan Ayling and Michael Johnson are there. And that wasn't true. Actually, they had found a Māori who would sit on the panel. It was simply a Māori who wouldn't disagree with us, who would have had a lot more agreement with us. And so it's probably the wrong type of Māori then in their minds. And so it's quite telling, I think, that in many ways these important conversations are being held ransom by our would-be centres, by people who, unless the debate is entirely on their terms, unless they can control the language and control the questions, they simply won't participate. And then they will condemn the lack of diversity on it, even though they were the ones that caused it.
Yeah. Jonathan, I always looked at this from the outside and thought you were being set up. I thought you were somewhat naive and certainly very generous in your assessment of what was happening at that event at Victoria University. Do you now accept that you were in a very hostile environment, you were being gaslit and lied to?
I don't think I ever would have disputed that I was in a very hostile environment. I would like to always hope that differences of opinion are matters of prioritization and nuance. And look, I can see now that is absolutely not the case. Is that naive? Hopefully, I can continue to go forward. Believing the best of our opponents. But in due course, they'll reveal themselves. There's a strong free speech argument there, in a way, Sean, especially when you're working for a publicly funded institution. Yeah. Your speech will come out one way or the other. Have you had an
apology from the Vice-Chancellor, from the university? Because the documents you've uncovered show that you were treated unfairly, you were targeted, you were defamed.
Probably the opposite, Sean. Since those documents have come out, I've reached out to the Vice-Chancellor on a couple of occasions, and in every time I feel actually the response has just been less decent, less just basically conversational and trying to move forward on issues that we can discuss. And I understand that's been different with Michael Johnson, so the Vice-Chancellor's probably developed a very strong view of myself and the Free Speech Union, and fair enough. But, this is what has led to the really strong belief, Sean, that universities won't change themselves. And I guess, and perhaps naively, I had hoped that we would actually be able to see universities not require overt state engagement and enforcement by the government to require them to change, because that's problematic. I don't want the state to feel like it has to draft rules for every institution around how precisely it has to defend free speech. And so we've been trying to sound the alarm bell to universities that unless they pay attention to the way, put aside whether it's true or not, and of course I think it is true that they're entirely censorial, but putting that aside, at least they're perceived that way. And so unless they do something about that perception, before long, the people who fund them, and that's you and me, are going to want something done about that.
Okay. Well, as much as Victoria University has woefully failed the test, not just the free speech test, if you like, but the test of decency and open public discourse. I note also that you guys have been in praise of another university for actually coming up with a pretty good statement on academic freedom and freedom of speech this week.
That's absolutely right. And I've graduated from Victoria University. I feel very disappointed by my alma mater in this saga. But I've also graduated from Otago University, and Otago took my breath away at the beginning of this week. And my team thought, is this a joke? We couldn't believe when they released their free speech policy